Vaughan in hand today. So you are the founder and CEO of Vaughan Timbers. Thank you for speaking. Would you like a backup?
I'll just see this.
Great. Do you want to use the mobile? Okay, great. That's for technology.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, for having me. Well, this is my second time speaking to this group. I'm trying to remember what year it was, but it was in Vancouver, I think at the Heathman Lodge. And, I always tend to think it's like, oh, it's just been a couple years ago. Now you look back, well, it's like 7. So I don't think it was that far. I just wanted to share with you my high-tech PowerPoint. So I don't have to keep track of slides today. So I'm going to go through a few things. I'll tell you a little bit about my history. For those of you that heard it, hopefully I say the same things I did last time. And then we'll go through a few things, and then we'll do a Q&A discussion, because there's a lot of things that I work on that I'd really like to get feedback from you here as a group. So I'm a 4th generation sawmiller. My great-grandfather, prior to Vaughan Brothers Lumber, had 7 sawmills in northeast Washington, northern Idaho, and I think even in northwest Montana. It's pretty interesting to think about that as before uniform tools, before really any roads. And so those 7 sawmills sounds pretty great in today's context, but I think there was some common stuff he had to drag with him to each one, and then he cut boards for the local homesteads there. So that's kind of where it started. And then he taught my grandfather, which was his son-in-law, how to sawmill. And in 1952, my grandfather and my great-uncle started Vaughan Brothers Lumber just outside of Colville, Washington. And that's gone on for quite some time, and we've seen a lot of changes. And fast forward to now, we're one of the few small-owned, family-owned, independent companies still in the forest industry that are actually manufacturing product. The rest of you are the other small family business owners in the forest industry. And it's humbling and it's challenging, because there's not a lot of people to go talk to about how you made it, because we're kind of by ourselves. But we made a shift, and the reason we survived is we shifted to small diameter trees and small diameter logs in the late 80s. And we were told, or my dad, Dwayne, was told that, well, that's not going to work. I mean, why would you want to cut all those little lodgepole that we just either drive over or throw in the slack pile? Well, he bought the first Hewsaw to North America, and Hewsaw is a Finnish company, and they now have a North American headquarters, and they have an office in Atlanta, Georgia, in the south. So that was a successful situation for more than one family. They're also a small family, Hewsaw is in Finland. And the reason that it made sense in Finland is because in Scandinavia, all they have are small trees. They don't have the big forests that we have, in particular on the West Coast. So he had seen that before in publications or something, and my dad went and bought that. And that was really our ticket to the future for our company. So small logs and thinning and forest restoration is kind of what we do and in our blood. And about, 16 years ago, we started the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition. And it was born because we knew that it wasn't going the way it should be going. We knew that we were doing good things out in the forest, and if we just maybe talked to some of these environmentalists, maybe we would get someplace. And people go, that's not going to work. Well, it's working, and it's working now in a big way. It's great to follow somebody from the Forest Service, because I had the privilege of being at the Mass Timber Conference in March, and the chief of the Forest Service, and I've heard a few speeches from chiefs of the Forest Service. Not one of them's ever said the Colville National Forest. Vicki Christensen not only mentioned the Colville National Forest, she mentioned it 3 times, and it was the only national forest she mentioned. And the reason being is it's the forest that is picking up the cut for the entire region. And it's all because of the collaborative effort that we've done on the forest to get the social license to do the kind of work that we're doing. The other interesting thing is now people hear, okay, 100 million board feet, like, are they destroying that forest up there? Well, quite the contrary. The work that we're doing is all based on outcomes on the ground, not extracting product from the forest. And it's pretty incredible. And it took a long time to talk with people like Maurice Williamson, who I'm sure a lot of you know in here. I'm sorry about that. But to try to convince him that we didn't need to be focused on volume, that if we focused on treating acres and getting there, we will get volume out of the forest. And we're getting there. And I think that it's not applicable everywhere. I'm not going to tell you, hey, just go collaborate and your forest problems will be forever solved. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's 16 years into it. We're a 16-year overnight success, I guess you'd say. But what I see is in forests like this, these dry site forests, we're trying to create a template that could be redone throughout the Intermountain West, throughout these fire-adapted landscapes. I love the idea of prescribed fire, but the fact is that most of these forests are too thick to even have fire enter into them. So we need to manage and introduce fire. And we can build businesses around that that are great for communities. And now we've got some new products. What I'm doing now is probably the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. And that is to do the most difficult thing in my life to do the most exciting thing, and that is to leave my family business. I had to step away from Vaughan Brothers. There was some, I mean, you all are family landowners, you know family business. You can imagine those discussions there. I'm glad we didn't have a camera rolling. But I started Vaughan Timbers, and I did that because I saw the value that was created for an Austrian family that has a sawmill that's 115 years old, and they just started producing mass timber 10 years ago. And their profitability from the sawmill and the mass timber side of their business is equal. So they've essentially been able to afford to buy logs that the multinational companies were forcing the price up. So when I saw that, I said, okay, well, here's an opportunity for us to add value to the product that we have. But even more than that, it allows us to tell a story all the way from the forest to the structure. And for me, that's really important because I think what we're doing with collaboration with our local forests, it's really great stuff. But then we package that unit of 2x4s, goes on a truck, and where does it go? Nobody knows. Because it just goes out into the commodity ocean of lumber. And so if somebody sees what we're doing on social media, I'll touch on the media part in a minute, but they go, oh, we really want to buy your product. Well, it might not be where they're at. I have no way of telling them, oh, you just go to the Home Depot or Dunn Lumber or something like that. I'm sure they have our wood. Well, I don't know that. And we have no control over that because it's a commodity. But by producing things that are value added, where architects are designing our products to be spec'd into structures, now all of a sudden we can start having a different conversation about forest management because it's reaching all the way into South Lake Union and Ballard and places where we're seeing a densification of our population, and we can do that in wood. And we also have the whole carbon pollution thing and climate change. Guess what? Wood's actually storing the carbon. We've got a great story to tell. And I think now we can start to do that. The last part I want to touch on is, it's probably 2 parts, but I'm running out of time. I want to touch on why I've got a camera here. So people, I don't love cameras, I don't love photography, but what I do love doing is telling stories. And we have social media now and other mediums out there that help us tell stories at a scale that we've never seen before. I was telling the group at my table that I will get videos put out on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I'll get the analytics back. And like I had 87 people from Sao Paulo, Brazil watch one of my videos. I don't know anybody even from Brazil. But I've got some friends now on LinkedIn and some other things. I would just encourage you to use those as a business tool to tell the story. I love coming here and talking to all of you. But you aren't the problem. You aren't what we need to change. You guys, we're all on the same team here. It's the people that don't know that they need to be on our team that we need to be talking to. And to understand that our forests have a great story to tell. We're getting ready to produce some great products like cross-laminated timber and glue-laminated timber, which is basically a glue lam beam put on its side that you can use for a floor or ceiling joist in ways that we've never used before. And the coolest part about it is the environmentalists are begging us to build these products for the marketplace. And I think that's super exciting. So with that, I'd love to open it up to questions for a couple minutes and then we'll move on. Thank you. Back here.
I read about an 18-story CLT building that was built up as Vancouver.
Yes.
Stories.
I can tell you some really cool stats about that building. So we asked about an 18-story building that was built in Vancouver, BC at UBC. If you just Google Brock Commons, there's a YouTube video and it's a time lapse and it's really cool and they put all the stats that go into it. Some cool things that I think, 18 stories, 9.5 weeks, done. Ahead of schedule with a crew that's never installed it before. Pretty amazing stuff. It's what you can do when you pre-engineer a product to go into a structure. The connections are already cut into it. You're assembling more than you are building, because a lot of that stuff is done in the factory. That 9.5 weeks is cool. The production facility, which is not far from here, actually, is called Crow Flies. It's up in Penticton. We actually, Vaughan Brothers supplied product to that CLT factory. That was 5.5 weeks, 2 shifts of their production. So think about that. That means they can only build 10 of those structures. So that's, the market opportunity is huge. They're also the leader in the West Coast as far as mass timber is concerned, in my opinion. They're one of 4 in North America producing these products. There's 60 in Europe. We have a big opportunity ahead of us. And I'd like to say that this part of the world can become the Austria of North America. We can be the best utilization of our forest products and do it in a way that's in concert with the community. So I'm really excited about that.
Russ, isn't it true that that 18-story wood building is safer from fire than a steel building would be?
That is true.
It's not a plant, I promise.
The interesting thing is that they had code issues there. Guess how many layers of drywall they had to put on that? 3 layers. It's crazy. But what I'd like to point out is some information that came from another project that's going into Portland. It's called the Framework Project. It's a 12-story mass timber facility, or mass timber building, mainly CLT. They did the fire testing, and they designed all the steel connections to go inside the wood because the wood performs so dramatically better that it'll actually protect the steel connectors. Because we've all started fires. We're talking about prescribed fire. We'll take a match and go up to a big log and try to light it on fire. Because that's the equivalent of lighting mass timber on fire. So I think with that we'll wrap up. So thank you everybody for having me.